Well, first of all, I want to say this is an incredible group. Please give yourselves all a round of applause because this is like the best user feedback you're going to get anywhere without paying people. So come on, give yourself a round of applause. Seriously, I mean, all of the stories that I've heard, I've lived through, and then some. And even I want to talk to you about your ICO and doing things in blockchain for energy, because I've been through that with clients as well. So I want to thank Kalev, I want to thank Ryan Ranu, I want to thank everyone here at Palo Alto Club, I want to thank you. I'm Chris Paff. I run an advisory and consultancy firm in the New York area, Chris Paff Tech Media LLC. We work mostly with early to mid-stage technology and new media ventures, mostly from Europe for the last 10 years, and mostly in the Nordic Baltic region. My COO, Linda Otto, is an Estonian citizen. She's also my wife. I do know Mick Orland and several other people here personally and professionally, and this is a wonderful place to be. This is probably my 5th time in Teleskivi. I was first here 4 years ago when it was still fairly new, and I was scouting to find an Estopreneur to do a one-on-one conversation with at Slush, and I chose Ernest Paker across the street. By the way, I coined Estopreneur in 2014, and I own the domains. And I launched that with an event at Garage 48, thank you to Harry Talon. So that was a lot of fun. And that was after I coined Fintrepreneur in 2011. I own those domains. And that was to market ex-Nokians who became forced entrepreneurs. And one of the biggest differences between a Fintrepreneur and an Estopreneur is when you were an Estopreneur, that meant you had to make your own stuff for 47 years, which means you're probably better at making stuff than a Fintrepreneur, which is true. So I work with a lot of app-based businesses, a lot of people in the mobility space, everything from digital healthcare to obviously OTT services, and so many different types of apps that we've worked with and launched and helped relaunch that it's kind of hard to count because their whole business is obviously based on apps today, even if they're Facebook apps or they could be desktop web apps. But they all require all the things that you talked about, and particularly, in the success. I mean, I think that, by the way, that was a tremendous breakdown of what you did. I don't even know what you built, but that was a really good breakdown. But there are all kinds of things that you have to pay attention to. I mean, there are things that you can do to tease the market with not a lot of money, just to put an app out there. I can tell you that one of the key things that I think maybe you were about to touch on, and I'm going to put words in your mouth, but getting somebody who's a good developer, who has a good relationship with Apple and Google it sounds, I know, like, really ridiculous, but honestly, there's a good cadre of them out there. And the more you get to know them, or somebody who has, some good contacts there, it's really important because you can get a lot of favors. What do I mean by that? It means that I think over here, this was, by the way, in the So-So group, you did a great explanation of what can happen if you delay an app. That's killer, but it's also important to know that if somebody in the Apple App Store, for example, likes your app, they may tell you, I want to feature this, so could you hold off another week? Now, that may be difficult for you if you've communicated to users that you're going to launch on October 23rd, and Apple says, no, we want to feature you, and when we feature you, it's good to be new, and we're going to do it on October 30th. Well, that's a good problem to have, but it really helps if you know somebody, as I said, and the same goes with Google Play. So that's really critical. Why? Because you get a lot of favors from them. If there's an emergency on a Saturday night with your app, they can help you fix it. Also, they can give you some other tips too. And there really isn't any one thing that will get you featured, other than the fact that you might have some designers who can give you some good tricks. Ooh, by the way, I like how Kalev writes. I can't even read my own handwriting, so give it up for Kalev. I mean, that's really good. That should be an app. But I think that it's important to have that kind of rock star developer person who has some insight into the app stores, but also someone who knows what's going to get attention. Simplicity, I think somebody had pointed out, I think you had pointed out that you want to build an app that has good speed. I mean, you know, there are tons of great user experience, user interface, UX designers in this general area. You know, find somebody who does something beautiful that you like, that you think is really cool, and maybe it's also useful as well. You know, I know way too many of them in Finland who built like really stupid apps that I think are brilliant, but they don't go anywhere. Why? Because they do it for fun. So that's another thing. Look at the apps in the App Store that do those things. You know, see what has been successful, what gets featured and reviewed well, what gets a lot of users. I'm going to tell you one thing, and by the way, you said something that you had me howling because I was thinking of one app in particular. There was a guy named Moishe Geg. This was about 6 or 7 years ago. He launched an app called Yo. Does anyone remember Yo? Okay, it's all right. It's not a test. It's not a test. He raised $1 million for an app called Yo, and you would send a Yo like to a friend. Like I'd connect with Colin, I'd say Yo. Okay, that was the dumbest app in the world. And he said there's a fine line between being stupid and clever. Okay, which is a line from Spinal Tap, okay? But he said that in a Q&A, and I said, well, it's true. I mean, it was really clever because somebody thought this was going to be the next push notification. It would be like, you know, something, but it was just Yo, and it lasted about 3 months, and $1 million probably went to a nice vacation or something. But somebody was willing to throw down money to say, will people do Yo? Well, yes, for 3 weeks they would do that, right? And that's another problem that you have. You might have a great success that also turns out to be a great failure because you don't know how to sustain it, right? The percentage of apps that get downloaded but never open is still rather high. The number of people who will use it within 3 weeks and don't come back. And then, of course, there's the biggest dread. How many people downloaded the version 13.2 of iOS recently? Okay, so that's a pretty good percentage in the room. How many people have an app that needs to be updated that they've developed because of that change? Well, in the broader world, it's a huge number. And there may be new features that people like that you have to keep up with. So that can be a real nightmare. So you almost have to look ahead, and that's the other thing. You know, that rock star developer or a person who's in the market can tell you what Apple, Google, or others are looking to bring to bear, particularly with things like Apple TV, things you have to be aware of months down the road that you can design around. So that's another key thing to look at. In terms of money and sustaining things, I mean, sometimes the simpler the better. Your point about simplicity is absolutely correct. There might be 1 or 2 things that you really want to do to test user assumptions, and that might not be your only business. So somebody said, I don't know who it was, but maybe you don't need an app, or if you do have an app, it should maybe just be a teaser. You know, we have plenty of clients who have apps that are really just demo. It's just a demo so that somebody can either go to your website or check out some basic features of whatever it is you're selling. And that's another thing, you know, you have to upgrade that, but you know, you build that into your marketing budget, and that's a good thing. You know, the other, I think, issue is also looking at something that's really well differentiated. Somebody said, I think in the So-So group, there are too many apps doing the same thing at the same time. Well, maybe yes, but you know, if you get some super users who can give you really good feedback and refer you to other people, that can be really, really huge. And that's something that I think that everybody can do with any product, but particularly with an app, because again, the assumption is if you download it and play with it, within an hour or 2, you might, you know, either refer it to a friend or you'd never use it again. So, you know, be your own best customer in that respect as well.
How do you define super user? What is a super user?
So a super user is somebody who, generally speaking, will live off of your product or your app. Who, you know, is the kind of person who comments all the time. He or she may have, you know, missing some wires, but at the same time, that's really important because they will overshare. So you need to find those super users who are out there. Find apps where, you know, you can even Google this stuff. Who are the super users for certain apps? They probably are leading some community bulletin board, or they also have a blog. So those are the people who will give you good feedback for free. In the so-so group, it was interesting. I think you said you lost 6,000 users because of a delay. One way to guard against that is to do a controlled beta where you only let a certain number of people in, and say you're going to tap it, you're going to keep the app private, and say, look, reward these people. I don't know, it could be a very easy, simple reward, but super users like to be rewarded. They like to be recognized. These are people who would like to be right and not rich, okay? Which is fine, because if you want to be rich, you need those people to help you get there. And what I mean by that is it's creating that ecosystem. The whole app economy is based on people using something all the time. So, give your users something back. There were some great questions that came in that Khalif sent me a couple hours ago before I came here. And one of them was something like this, and I can pull it out and actually read it, but it was, what should you do if you fail with an app? Should you relaunch it? And the answer is yes, of course. We've had clients who have had apps that were low grade, did something that they wanted to do, and we had some success launching it, and then they completely refurbished it and made it almost too good, but it was an even better success. So, that's the other beauty of the App Store is that you're not shut out from relaunching something. You could rename it, you could reskin it, you could call it something different in different markets. And that's, another thing is looking at, apps that have succeeded in certain markets. I mean, here you can get great user feedback in a few countries, but you can also very quickly go global and nobody would know where you're from. That's the other beauty of launching an app globally. So, it's just a couple of things to keep in mind. Yeah.
If we go to the steps or lists of what the successful group came up with, would you add there anything, or what are, in your experience, the most crucial ones, or where you have seen the biggest failures?
I think the biggest failure is in someone who thinks that the whole business should be based on the app, meaning that the app will speak for you. It never does. So no matter how beautiful it is, so you've always got to be working the marketing angle on this in the sense that there are fewer outlets that will give you app reviews per se, but if you basically tell your story really well, you can get a lot of users through that, but you have to really sustain the marketing side of it. So the other thing is, don't cry or think you're a failure because your launch, or whatever you deem your launch period, it could be 3 days, it could be 30 days. Sometimes it takes a long time for people to discover apps. They can find them very quickly, obviously through, things like Mac Rumors or other sources, and people who are just trolling through the App Store. But, you have to play the long game with a really well-designed app because, you'll need to make tweaks to it, which is a hard thing if you have a limited budget. But you have to build that into your plan. And then the other side of it is that you also have to look at what you need to even tweak it or pivot. So one of the things that I've seen that's been really successful for some of our clients is when they're doing different work for let's say different brands, particularly TV brands where they're doing different versions of their app. That's really important because you're reaching different audiences who are using different versions of your app, but if your business is doing that, then you're going to sustain that work. But if you're launching a business with an app, you can bet that you really have to go beyond 30 days to see any kind of sizable feedback, unless you've got a huge marketing budget. But let's just assume you don't. So that's a large part of it. Word of mouth is also really key. I mean, we talk about this with super users who like to be rewarded. Those are people who really can become ambassadors for your app. So, look at different affinity groups, people who are looking at different apps, whether it's something for your accounting, or you want house cleaners. I mean, we know all types of business to consumer or B2B2C apps. I think that's really key as well. So I'm trying to think of some of the other questions that people ask, because I want to be sensitive to some of the people who wrote in, because there's some really good ones. It would help if I had the right device. Hold on. How many people have Android and iOS? Both. Only a few? Okay, that's interesting. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. So, other one. In a world full of apps, what would you tell founders without a large investment in their company to gain massive traffic? I would say that you have to have a really well-differentiated story. It goes back to one of the things that somebody had said earlier. If you can't really differentiate why somebody should use the app, then don't launch it. That's number one, which is pretty obvious. But it's sort of like saying, you can't make a pig sing. Why? Because it'll never work, and it's just going to make the pig angry. So don't do it. Don't do it. Key elements to successful app launches. I think to echo some of the things that our successful table said over here. One of the things is to listen. Again, this is an intense user base. I mean, people are giving you feedback within minutes. And they will know when your app launches before you do. Apple or Google will tell you roughly when something's going to launch. It very rarely happens on time. It could be late or it could be early. And if it's early, just know that once you submit it, that's when the clock starts ticking. How do you find test users and how do you motivate them? Well, I basically talked about that, but I think that the better you are, for them, the better they're going to be for you. I think test groups are all over the place. You can even cast people, and I think that this is really key. This is something that I think works for just about any digital business, but particularly for apps. Find people in the community that you're trying to hit who could be. I mean, if you're doing something on finding a new house or an apartment, there are apartment rental apps. There's Codit.io. There are all these things that are out there. But you might know somebody who's a real estate broker. That person might give you great feedback. They may become a super user. Cast somebody to talk about your app and the utility of it, because otherwise it's just you talking to yourself and your friends.
How do you do it in practice, or how do you convince somebody to be a spokesperson for you? Or?
Well, I think it's. In this case, it's really somebody who is going to do something different. So like we relaunched, we had a client who, Netamat, which built like one of the first mobile content communities many years ago. This was like 16 years ago. And they're doing heavy back-end work, and they built the Oracle Mobility Server. So they had a passion project. They wanted to create an app that allowed people to create photos and video with different filters. And the original version was not well designed, and it was called Jollify, which I thought was kind of, twee. And I was like, okay. But it was really cool, and we got some great press out of it. But it had a limited number of features. And we said, well, wait a minute, we need to get producers using this. So I said, well, one of the great things is if you get somebody who's going to give you good press, so we got Jonathan Bloom from KGO San Francisco, who's the big ABC affiliate, and he's a great producer, editor, or predator. He goes out and he shoots and he's editing quickly and he's good on camera. And I said, well, I bet you can't do, a better video than this guy did. And he took the challenge. And he had so much fun with it, and he taught his kid how to use it. His kid was like 8 years old. So he really got into it. And he started talking it up. And suddenly, between what I was doing and what he was doing, we had all these people who wanted to start using it. And then we got feedback from them to get new filters, totally redesigned it, called it Spotlighter. And now it still has like some of the best filters that I've seen in any app. I don't use it that often, but when I do, I'm like, wow, that is really, really cool. But that was a very successful app for them. And, it was a side business for them. I mean, it wasn't their main business, but, the key is that, if you really, you have to keep at it all the time.
But it means also that you have to know somebody who has some key value in
But think about it. Like, everyone here was very very giving, very sharing, very, very honest about what worked and didn't work or what they want to have work. You can get honest feedback from people, even if you go to a meetup, you don't know who they are. You start talking and say, hey, let me show you this app. It's private now, I'll send you a link on test flight, play with it. Here's what it does, blah, 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 blah. You might find incredible use cases that way and get amazing features. But I think that the key is to look at the app business as one where, you have to not only expect the unexpected, which I think everybody assumes, but the more you can at least cast, some of those people and find those users, at least you're going to get some good feedback from them. They may not eventually be what wins your business long term, but that's the other thing. I mean, if you're starting something, sometimes you just have to make some noise and get users doing something that may have nothing to do with what happens, like a year later, where you really start hitting your stride, you're getting revenue, and then you do whatever you do. The next step, you become acquired, or you raise more money, or whatever it is. But I think that's the same thing with an app. It's way back before apps were a thing. It was the carriers had decks, so you had content decks. So you wanted to get on the deck, and that was a big deal, right? And then there was the off-deck strategy. It was like, all right, so now we're going to create this thing where people can create all kinds of different cool content. Well, so when we launched the first off-deck thing in the U.S., Thumbplay, R.A. Trostel used to be with Telenor. Was like, I said, what are we going to do? The only content I have is people looking at different pictures of models. And I said, well, as long as it's not porn, that's just something that will get some news, to talk about who you're licensing it from and all this stuff. And at least you'll get out there. And he said, I know this is a short-term service. And I said, fine, do it for 3 months before you get some other stuff going. Because this is a worse beast than the web. We used to say, feeding the beast for the web. Well, it is the web. It's just IP, delivery. So you have to have an even better schedule than you would for your Facebook site or your website. But the beauty is that if you cast enough users, if you release to new geographies, new markets, you should be excited about what could happen that might get you to change things. And I think that's the other aspect of this, is sort of like when you're starting, less is more, until it's maybe too much. So those are just a couple things. Somebody asked, are mobile apps with just 2 functions so yesterday? Now 2 functions was written with quotation marks. So I could tell you that Yo had 1 function and it was successful for a bit. But seriously, it really depends. I mean, what are those functions? Is it the air quality? Are you measuring air quality and your kid has asthma? Well, maybe if there are 2 things in that app that are really, really good and important, then great, then that's fine, and less is more. I think the testing that you have to do to discover whether those functions even matter is really important. So I would say, yeah, start with 2 functions and then go from there. Somebody asked about experience with API providers. So I can tell you that, Twilio, which everybody knows, CleverTap, who we worked with, these are really important platforms because they help you engage users. So those users who have not opened your app in 13 days, they help you market to those users. And that can be really, really effective. You wake up a lot of people, you send them notifications, you can do a lot of different things. So those are hugely important. There are a lot of really good things like App Annie and other platforms that help you, track the measurement, the usage base. Those are pretty essential. I think that's really, really key. Verto Analytics, we've worked with several times over the years, another Finnish company, which works with a lot of big companies, but you can get some fantastic traffic information, cross-platform traffic. We haven't talked much about ads, but obviously if you're doing mobile app ads, there are lots of different platforms you can use there. But again, the same person who can help you get placement in the Apple or Google app stores, those are people who probably know some good people who can help you really figure out your mobile app strategy. So that's I mean, that may be the difference between saving the business or not at the end of the day. So, yeah.
I have a question regarding I'm a startup in Estonia. Right now, I don't know anybody, like a rockstar super user, like rockstar developers from Google or Apple.
Oh, no, there are people here who have done that work.
Okay.
I guarantee you.
Okay.
We could probably throw a stone and hit one of them right now, okay? I know some who were just over there years ago. No, they're here. Why? Because some of them are doing back-end work for big companies. You know, like when we launched Ixanos in the US, they had a nice team here that was doing like heavy-duty coding. So they're here. They may be working for somebody else. They may be working for Oracle. They may be working for Wipro or Huawei or somebody. But if they're not available to do the work for you, they know somebody. So trust me, they're here. And if they're not here, they're probably in Helsinki and they're unemployed. So just get on the ferry, go buy some beer for them, or just bring a couple of cases of a la carte on the ferry. And no, I'm not joking, I'm serious. You know, it's like this, that's how you find them. It's a lot of word of mouth. And I can tell you there are some people I know personally, particularly in Helsinki, who are just amazing designers. So I mentioned this I alluded to this one guy earlier, Kalle Mattila, and he built an app that I loved. It was called Twheel, Twheel. So it was a Twitter wheel. So it was really simple, but you could move, scrolling through a wheel to look at your different tweets. And he won all kinds of app awards for doing that app and all these others. And his brother, of course, is a great app designer as well. So that's the other thing. I mean, in this general area, if you meet one, it's probably you only have to look at one household to look at a few rockstar developers. And people who have knowledge, and they don't consider it as important necessarily, because if they're not doing it for themselves, they're doing it for other people, they're willing to share, again, if you buy them lots of beer. So I would say that, yeah, generally speaking, you might think that you don't know these people, but they're here. And it is really important to have them on your team, even if they're just freelancing, right? Yeah.
So, in between, I will sum it up and open it for the audience for a while. So basically, the steps we got from a successful team, plus the lessons learned from not so successful groups, pretty much cover the whole process. The trick, what you say, is that look at the app as a business, that it has to support your business, and you can do like apps just for the demo. They don't do anything else than just support your business as a demo. But if you want to be a successful app, like company, then app has to do something more than just being an app. That it has to be some kind of value creator for a very specific use case, solving somebody's problem. And nowadays it just takes time. It's not, we are way beyond the times where you could launch something and have like overnight success in 30 days.
Right.
That the more your app is a business, that it's just not entertainment, but it actually helps somebody to do something, then it takes more than just 30 days to actually get it to the significant crowd of your audience. And in order to do that, there's nothing else actually better than word of mouth of power users or super users and among your key group. And you can find them by their behavior, that they are commenting or blogging on the topics you are active in, or your app is doing something, or they are like leaders of groups and online communities. And usually they are relatively accessible, that if your case is good, that if your app does any good to that community, they are willing to look into it and are willing to share experience, and you can get something out from that. and in order to be ready for the future, find some rockstar developers who have been there, done that, have gone through that track of launching something, or can give you tips on how to get featured or whom to talk to in order to get featured in app stores. Did I miss anything?
No, I think you hit it all. Yeah.
Okay.
Well done.
So now to the audience, do you have any additional questions to Chris?
Okay, so I have been here for very little time. So
I'm sorry, can you repeat?
I have been here for very.
You've been here?
Yeah, in
In Holland. Just kidding.
So the thing is that I have no idea how to reach these superstars. Like,
Okay.
really, I know.
What do you do? Tell me what you do. What do you do?
It's a social network for action sports.
That's fantastic. What do you call it?
It's called Pro Tribe.
Pro Tribe?
Yes.
Ooh, I like that. Okay.
In generally speaking,
What kind of sports?
it would go. We included running and cycling.
Yeah, it's a good
It's
start.
of cycling,
Right.
Of action sport.
Yeah.
But they have a lot of users. And then we went for skating, surfing, snowboarding, climbing, all these.
So it's like affinity groups. They can communicate. You can give them information.
There's several tools. First, it's a sport finder, so places to practice.
Right.
Something like a TripAdvisor, what
Yeah.
places to.
We
to-
launched something like that years ago called Amper Sports. So do you know Small Giant Games? Timo Soininen? His son had this really cool service, like a dashboard, for booking times for amateur athletics. Like, he was in the Bay Area. Where can you find tennis courts that are available? Where can you find a skate park? I mean, it was brilliant because you have a lot of publicly available information. So, if you go to town hall here and say, give me the schedules, that's another key thing. There's so much available public data for really cool services like Pro Tribe. And I would say that, rockstar developers, first of all, so many of them are into extreme sports.
Really?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Are you kidding me?
It has been so hard for me just to find a developer that does any kind of sport.
Okay. Clearly.
That's talking about extreme sports.
Okay. And you're here in Tallinn?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. I know some very dangerous people in this town. So maybe you're just hanging out with the wrong crew. But no, seriously. I've had when we launched Reactor in the U.S., the top guy we called Poptef, he was a surfer. And they made fun of him because, you're in New York and you're surfing. I'm like, why are you making fun of me? You can go to Far Rockaway, you can go to the Jersey Shore, that's right. But no, he was a hardcore surfer. So the thing is that, you definitely, can find these people, even if they're living in Fiji or something.
They're how to create a team with them.
It's probably going to be a virtual team,
All right.
right?
Right.
Are you okay with that?
Probably. I have to tell you, I'm not that experienced.
But some of these people, but I can tell you that some of these people, will come here and set up a business because of the tax friendliness here.
Uh-huh.
And we know some of those people who are living all over the place.
All right.
So, we could talk separately,
No,
but I think that, the thing is that honestly, so many of these folks that you were trying to reach, whether it's a really great editor or somebody who's got a really great copywriter, or they're a really great, rock star app developer, and they're up all night or whatever, and they're going to raves on the weekend or whatever. They're out there. They may not be here, but they're out there in terms of being available to you, and to the extent that they may know somebody here as well. I would just say, putting something out there through LinkedIn groups or things like that. I think LinkedIn is wonderful. Even 10 years ago, I was able to connect with people. Before it was, now it's a much better service. But I would say that start small. It's be global to be local. go through those affinity groups, because the thing is that a lot of these folks are doing, you know, kite surfing and, you know, extreme, you know, tough mudder and all that, you know, kind of crap. So you know, and that's your market, right?
Totally.
Yeah, no, yeah, we'll talk afterwards. All right. So you're in a good place. Pro Tribe is a great name, by the way. Yeah. What's your name?
Angel.
Angel? All right. I like that.
More questions to Chris?
You had a question. You had a thought.
Hello.
Hello.
You mentioned that you make a noise to get your app visible.
Yes.
How would you make a noise with a healthcare app?
Tell me more. What is specifically are you doing?
My app is called Medikeep, and it's
Medikeep.
Medikeep. Yes. And it's for users, everybody like us. Doctors like to call us patients, but you can even use it when you're not a patient. You just need to take your vitamins or just want to manage your health notifications.
Yep.
How do you make a noise with an app like that?
Well, first of all, everyone drops their pills. Everyone needs to take some kind of pill. I mean, unless you're an android. But honestly, I think that that's a very common, that would be like, where did I put my keys? Where's my car? Where's my iPhone? That's so essential, you know, what you're doing, right? That, I mean, it doesn't have to be somebody who's got a pill box, who's 75 years old. It could be somebody who's 27. I would just say, you know, this is like, you know, this is as essential as you know, as drinking water. But I think you would need people, again, who can talk to the fact that they've used this and this is what they've learned. So it's...
But this is also biased because people don't tell about their health problems.
You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. Particularly in the US, people overshare. Particularly if they've been successful. If somebody said, I, you know, use CBD cream and, you know, this is the brand of CBD I use, and I put it on my knee and, you know, I have arthritis in my right knee and I woke up and the pain was gone. They will overshare like crazy. So, you know, you again, you have to cast your users here. You know what I'm saying? Like find a woman who's, you know, cast your demographics. A male who's 45, a woman who's 27, somebody who's 78 years old. You know, cast your users to tell your story and then gather the testimonials and use them. And I mean, that's because you have a very essential app, honestly. So, but you need what we call the gold. Your gold is your users, and the real gold is their story, their testimonial. That's your gold. Yeah.
Find some biohacker super users. Biohacking is really popular trend right now.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, to your
But
point.
then the doctors don't take the app seriously.
They don't take the app seriously. No, they will recommend. They will recommend. I mean, accountants talk about
doctors as well.
Yes, exactly. I'm a doctor and a patient and a user. Yeah. I mean, no, but that's seriously that's you know, the doctors love anything that helps their patients do better. I mean, your doctors.
Doctors do not like
In Estonia, they like money.
Wait, he needs the mic.
Doctors.
What is that? Okay, he had an editorial comment. I'll tell you later what he said. No, but seriously, I think that you don't worry about the tension. I mean, because who are you selling it to? Who should download and use? Is it Medikeep?
Medikeep, yes,
Yeah.
the regular everybody.
Okay, right. So never mind the doctors. You know, I mean, don't worry about them. I mean, they might recommend this. That's another great thing as well. But the bottom line is that everyone has. If you have an iPhone, you know, from like iPhone 6 and up, you have the health app, right? Okay. I only just use it to track, you know, how far I've walked. That's all I really care about. I don't care about the steps. Like, who gives a fuck about how many steps you walk? It's like how many miles. But the fact is that if I had a richer app that told me what I should take and all these things. I mean, you know, I would use it, but to me, I haven't seen anything like that. You may be the one. So one of the lines would be, you know, Apple shoves this health thing at you, but you want to use something that you can customize. I'm riffing, okay? But Medikeep would be that app, right? I mean, you know, if you said that like 10 essential apps, if somebody was writing this, or something you would want somebody to write, you know, this would be one of those essential apps. So, you know, but it's the users. You have to get your users to tell the story. You have to cast this like a play or a TV production. You know, who are those users? And without getting really freaky and pharmaceutical about this, but you know, if you've been in the US, you see these horrible ads that have 2 minutes of disclaimer and 30 seconds of content, and it's horrible. But you know, the point is that you know, you do need those people to tell your story. And they could be super users, or they could just be somebody you know. You know, you have to start, you know, from a really human point of view, right?
Thank you.
Maybe go look what the biohackers are looking themselves, what kind of statistics they need or use, or what you think.
That's true. So, I mean, that could be considered the far end of your user base, but you know, you have to play to them. You have to play to them too, possibly. Maybe Medikeep Pros for biohackers, right? Could be.
Any more questions? Actually, from the questions we collected, there was one regarding what do you consider yourself the greatest achievement or in your career?
Oh God. Let's see. Launching my business in December of 2001, 3 months after 9/11, and in the trough of a really bad tech recession. Why was that hard? Because I hadn't done a business for myself. I'd launched many ventures before. But I'll tell you why I loved doing that. And there will be another recession soon enough. So let me tell you, it's a great time to launch a business in a recession. Why? Everybody's destroyed. You have access to everybody. Now, and believe me, in December of 2001 and going forward the next 5 months, I had access to everybody, big name people who were just sitting there, you know, like playing, you know, video games. I mean, that was the greatest thing, right? And you know, it taught me that is literally, I mean, if you can build something when times are down, you learn what to do, and you learn how to triangulate and be really, really efficient. Really efficient, you know. You put all those things that you know intuitively to practice. So, and this is something that I see here. I mean, I think people who build the businesses that everybody uses here, whether it's Pipedrive or it's Bolt or Skype, hello, those are, I mean, you know, really, really efficient, really essential, really well engineered, really well thought out. You're not going to do anything unless you really think it's going to work and you're going to make it efficient. So, you know, that's another thing. I mean, this is sort of an adjunct answer to your question is, go to those people and ask them as well. And I'm sure, you know, you've probably seen them speak or whatever, but in as much as you can learn from each other, and you know, I think that, but also, you know, drill down into what, you know, they were doing as well. So, I mean, to me, that was the thing. I mean, I was more or less a forced entrepreneur. I was like, yeah, you know, I'm going to do this. But everybody, you know, had raised money. They were sitting on money. They didn't know what to do. And what do you do? You've got to make some noise. You have to make something happen. And that period will happen again. And I think that for those who haven't launched businesses or apps yet, you know, think about that. What can you do? Because people are going to need things that'll be very essential, that'll be low cost, that will connect them to other people, whether it's a B2B app or a B2C app like the Medikeep. So that's something you have to bear in mind. You know, don't pay attention to who just raised $35 million unless, you know, that's good for you, like CleverTap, because I think they're a good company for people to use. But don't worry about all that. You know, just focus on the fact that, you know, building an app is very, very essential and can be a very long-standing business. And if things are going to go south in 12 months, that could be a great time to launch because great things come out of that kind of period, not necessarily this kind of peak. A lot of companies that have raised tons of money in the last 2 years, particularly, say, in Silicon Valley, they won't be around next year. But it's the companies that are really learning from the market, that are really good with their resources. Those are the ones that will stick around. So that's a long answer to your question, but I think launching the business, and that was going on 18 years ago. But launching in that period, I thought was great because within a month I realized that wow, I have access to everybody, and this is fantastic because I had a big network then. But that was the time to really make some noise. And we did that with a couple of really key digital businesses at that time. And that really helped because there were a lot of people who weren't doing a lot of things. So if you're out there and you're really hustling during that period, you can do really well. So like that.
Not regards to the mobile app business, but regarding your comment about recession coming next 12 months. Did you refer to US or?
Yeah, I think that that's probably inevitable. I mean, we've already hit 10 plus years of the recovery period. It's fairly inevitable. I don't know how deep it'll be and necessarily in what sectors, but you just have to assume that could happen. And it's also a general election year, and a lot of investors will be sitting on their money, probably starting around April of next year. So things to think about, just in general. But I mean that's going to be a reality to plan for, to deal with. People usually don't, but if you're an investor, you're ahead of that curve in terms of planning. If you're launching a business, that's, as I said, something to think about as well. Launching a business during a down period could be great because, again, as I said, you may be the only person who's quote-unquote doing something. You could, I mean, the iPod launched the month after 9/11. Now, okay, it was Steve Jobs and it was Apple, but nobody remembers that was the period that it just so happened. And that was like great, if you plan, for that kind of eventuality, you could possibly do really well. But it's just that's just a reality. I mean, the more people talk about things, the more likely they talk themselves into that happening. So we don't know when, but at some point, probably in the next 12 months for sure. Yeah.
I have a question regarding what you mentioned that you shouldn't learn from companies, startups who have raised tons of money. You should learn from guys who are building a business wisely. How do I make a difference? Because if I look at app stores, there's plenty of guys who have so many money, really ridiculous amount of money. They have bought so many users, download numbers. If you look at the download number, it doesn't actually represent who is doing well and who is just buying their downloads. How do I make a difference, and how do I actually look at how do I find the data on who is actually making money and who is just burning it?
So, I mean, the likes of App Annie or some of these apps will give you good statistics, but I think you can also, you can also just look at various market numbers, look at some of the market research firms who are really putting out that good data. The key is, well, I mean, I really like what the likes of ABI Research does. And Strategy Analytics does great work on the mobile ecosystem. They put out a lot of reports. So look at some of the analyst firms in terms of some of the stuff they're putting out. The companies that have raised tons of money are doing that so that they can get acquired. So somebody writes a $50 million check because he or she thinks that this company and this buddy of mine is going to buy said company for $1 billion or $500 million. Sometimes it happens. okay? And maybe 1 out of 100 times it happens, but that's good enough for some. So don't get hung up on that, because if you're doing what you're doing well enough, you can grow that business, and you'll be there long after that company that raised $50 million is around. So don't be put off by that. For the same reason that people will say, hey, you just gave me a pitch, and I'm sorry, I heard that Microsoft is in that business, or Google's in that business, or Apple's got something. And my answer would be, well, you know what they have? To me, that's competition. And you should be glad that I have competition, because otherwise you probably should invest in me. So screw you, But no, you'll hear that from some investors, and it's a very real thing for them to say. But the fact is that what Google has may suck, okay, honestly, and the same with Microsoft. Or it may not be good enough for the long term. So that's just something to be aware of. But don't be frightened, by that. So.
Just as an example, Google Family Link, which if you think that Google is like a big company, they have social responsibility and all that stuff, keeping kids out of screen time or minimizing it because there's some health issues and so forth. In reality, they were working on Family Link for 3 years or something, and the development team was not a priority.
No.
So that's a problem that Google and the big guys have, that yes, they have tons of these App Store products they're developing, but unless it's a priority, these products actually don't get the top-notch development team. They get like a third echelon or like a third level or so forth, and that everything is struggle for these teams because things don't go as fast as top priority.
That's a really key point.
And when they launched, actually it was so difficult to use it that for a guy, like we had a startup dealing with the same issue, and which the launch of Screen Time and Family Link killed their business, but still the first time a Family Link was so difficult to implement that the guy who had been working on a back end on their own app and knew how to connect these things, it took him like a half a day, and he was like a hardcore developer to implement it. So there's no way like how difficult it would be for like average dad or mom to do the same. So yeah, I totally agree that investors hit you with this.
Well, here's the thing though.
Four horsemen question that these guys are out there. Are you not afraid? But yeah, the answer is that usually it's not winner takes it all, but in very seldom the market is a winner takes it all. And usually, if you can prove that it's not a priority for the big guys, you're actually in a good market.
But here's another piece of research. Think about the Google Family thing was basically, okay, we have Nest, we want to push more into the home, we want to get Google Voice out there. So people were forced to do that. But if you're in that same business, you're competing with them, and you're 20 people, and they've got a couple hundred developers, presumably. Find out who those people are. Maybe you want to hire one of them. Maybe they like what you're doing and suggest to their boss that they should acquire you. I mean, look at the big fish as your friend. They're human beings. They do the same things. They eat the same food. Don't be put off by them. And I think that's the other issue too, is what you can learn from what they're not doing well. They can do the same, and that might be the difference between whether you succeed or not. But it is just something to look at. I mean, we all follow the big people in whatever field, whether Adobe is a client's problem, or Microsoft, or whoever else, could be Comcast. But at the same time, who are the people who are really doing that work? If you know some of them, or people who know them, that'll give you more real insight as opposed to just reading a headline in a news story or getting somebody who just said, I heard such and such, and they posted on LinkedIn or something. I mean, those are the things that you really have to drill down into, because at the end of the day, you know, so much of this is based, as you mentioned, on what are you doing with the technology. It's really hard because you have to build something and then you've got to test it. And you know, every iOS change, every new device layer, every you know, behavior set. I mean, you mentioned screen time. There are plenty of people who freaked out, trust me, when that became an issue. And Tim Cook had to say, oh, I'm cutting down on my screen time. It's like, really? Come on. You know, I mean, you're going to say that because you don't want regulators coming down on you. You don't want bad PR. So you have to play that game. But the fact is that was a big freak out for a lot of people saying, are you kidding me? We're now talking about less screen time. You know, we're trying to sell ads. We're trying to sell whatever. You know, what? You know, you got to be up 26 hours a day, at least. You know, but it's you know, that's a game to play. You know, everything that becomes some kind of fear. You know, that fear factor, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. You have to try and turn it around to your favor. I mean, it's just, and you know, smart marketing, smart PR, smart, you know, listening to what's happening can really move the boat in your favor, particularly if you've already launched. Because, you know, once you're out there and suddenly, you know, it's what I said about companies that have raised a lot of money. When a recession hits, they'll freak out because they don't know how to go forward, and they may fail miserably, and then, you know, they've got to be sold for $1 when they raise, like, you know, $100 million. I mean, trust me, this shit happens. And by the way, if you're a company, you launch an app, and somebody wants to buy you for nothing, okay, don't say no. Don't say no, because you then have an exit. Nobody needs to know what the price was, okay? We have a French client, I won't mention his name, but I set up a deal for him, and you know, a long-standing client said, well, I want to buy it, but I'm not going to pay anything, you should take the deal. And he didn't take the deal. And I said, why did he do that? That's the dumbest thing. You know, just saying that you killed something and you went to web heaven, there's no joy in that, you know, unless you're just really mean-spirited. Like, I didn't want anyone to use this anymore, so I killed it. So, yeah. No, so I mean, if somebody says, I want to take your technology and your users, and the difference between shutting down and all that, and letting a deal go through for nothing, basically, you at least will have an exit. You could say you've exited and someone will say, great, you sold to Oracle, you sold to Pipedrive or whatever. That's cool. I mean, you know, I'm not saying that this is something you should wake up and do, and say, yeah, I've got that pile of crap, I'm gonna sell to Bob for nothing. But seriously, if you're in that situation, you should say, yeah, it was a great thing that we did, and blah, 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 and, you know, we sold it to Cisco, and blah, 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 and I can't disclose the price, you know. And there are plenty of deals where acquisition prices aren't disclosed because they're rounding errors. You know, if you're a Fortune 100 company, you don't announce the price if it's less than, these days it could be 40 million. Back in the day, it was like 15 million, or an acqui-hire, right? A lot of these acqui-hires you hear about, there's not a lot of money, if any. It's just you, and you. Now you're wearing our uniform, and it's an acquisition, and you should be happy, right? But seriously, that keeps things going. I mean, you have to always look at that. The thing that you put on the shelf a couple of years ago may come back, and suddenly it's like, yeah, we really should put that out there again, you know? So, I mean, that's the thing, because the idea that you had 3 years ago wasn't ready, and now the technology's ready. I mean, you know, and next year we'll all be talking about what 5G has done to transform everything, and at least 3 people will have ideas that, like ProTribe over here, I think will be, and that's a great line for you, just say, it'll be even better with 5G. You know? It'll be more extreme. We like it extreme. Yeah, no, I mean, that's seriously, I mean, these are things you need to think about, so.
That was a really cool advice. Regarding going back to the collecting like feedback, or not feedback, but lessons learned, like asking for the big guys, what they are doing. Actually, what I found, what our portfolio startups have used quite well is that talking to other startups in the space most often people are actually willing to talk to you and share their lessons learned, because most of the times you are in totally different time zones competing. Even if you have some users in US, then no US app will actually consider you a major threat. So lessons learned from these guys can benefit you quite a bit. And the other, contacting the guys who have failed. Like we have here one startup whose major competitor is going is shutting down. They are like cloud service, like SaaS type of thing, in a health, in a human resources, HR. So one of the biggest competitors who is doing pretty much exactly what they are planning to launch is going belly up. And out of the 4 founders, they got a call with 2 founders and 1 investor, talking about what went well, what sucked, and why they are quitting the business.
Wow.
So it's actually not so hard.
It's true. I mean, I was saying earlier, if you take some a la carte, take a couple of cases over to Helsinki, get a couple of Finnish guys drunk, and then they'll actually start talking, okay, and not looking at their shoes. But the fact is that you can learn a lot from just going up to people, flatter some people, talk to them. They want to know, gee, you did that thing, that was great, let's talk about this on a human level. A couple of lessons learned, and this was for the so-so group mostly. Nothing happens until somebody sells something, okay? So, to Medikey, all right? Get out there, your first ideas that you think are gonna work, just get out there and make it happen. Don't worry so much. So that's the key word. Nothing really happens until you sell something. So good ideas are a dime a dozen. That's like one of my pet phrases that I love, which goes to number 1, which is, execution matters. Great ideas are nothing unless you execute on them. Put them on the shelf, save them, but that's where you can improvise. If you can't describe your business to your best friend, think again. Because your best friend is a friend who will tell you if your ideas suck or whatever, but that's really key. Learn from others' mistakes, be a student of history so you don't become history. It's really, really, really important, to do that. We focus so much on either, gee, WeWork was the greatest thing, now they suck. Well, no, let's talk about what mistakes they made, not just the behaviors of their founder. Let's talk about businesses that nobody talks about anymore. Really try and learn. And investors can give you a lot of that history. So talk to some investors. You may know one. Always be prepared to make different moves. So if you have a good team, you can move in new directions to keep your company alive and well. So going back to all your technical prowess, be able to shift and to move, because that's where you might make it or you might not. You have to assume that you will have to move, pivot, shift, whatever. Yeah.
And actually I want to comment on this that I've seen with a few recent startups in our portfolio that don't start to expand your team until you are pretty sure what their product market fit is. It actually kills your team if you shift it like monthly or weekly. That our customer was apartment owner. No, it's a startup. No, it's a housewife. That shifting too often, it's okay. Pivoting is okay for founders, but it's not okay for employees and salespeople and developers, because they feel that they are never at par what's going on. That they are constantly developing a wrong thing, they are constantly selling a wrong thing, and people get really tired really fast if they have to work in such environment. So don't grow your team until you are pretty sure what you are going after, and hire the development in, or find a buddy who can do some MVP or find guys who are like-minded, that they are in a search mode, that it's okay for them, that they join you because they want to be part of a search mode. And that's what they like. They don't actually care, is it for housewives or is it for startups?
Yeah.
That's not their thing.
That's a great
But
suggestion.
if you start with startups, and then switch to housewives,
No.
then all the guys who join because they want to be somebody and make a mark in startup ecosystem, they will leave.
They will, yeah.
And it has happened like a few I know, and luckily it hasn't happened with the portfolio companies which have had the same problem with switching too fast, pivoting too fast with a big team. It's really crappy situation to be in.
That obviously you don't want to create a schizophrenic situation. But the fact is that if you have a really good team and you're able to really communicate well, if there's some reason that you really feel that you should shift or take advantage of a move, then do it. You know, I mean, Medikeep may be something where you're going to start with being an essential daily health app, and you might make a slight change to something slightly different. Biohackers, right? You know, what we consider like people who want to chip themselves today or something like that. Well, maybe that's a market tomorrow or something else, but or maybe they'll merge with ProTribe. We don't know yet. But no, seriously, I mean, those are the things you have to listen to. Your plan, your business plan, and whatever you sold to investors. If they believe in you, they'll believe in a change that you feel you need to make. That's all.
So did you end up with your list of lessons learned?
I think I did. I had one or two others, but I hit the key ones. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the audience? Yes.
See, I knew.
And what would you say to people who say that we are fed up with apps?
Who do you envision saying that to? Think about it.
Maybe our potential users or something like that.
Again, that's when you have to say you're not an app, you're a business. You just happen to do certain things that might require somebody to download an app. But think about it again. You don't think of, oh, I gotta whip out an app to get a car home on a Bolt. I gotta whip out an app to check the weather in Munich. It's part of your brand now, right? You don't even think about it. And to somebody's point about it, making it speedy, right? So if somebody says, oh God, really you're gonna sell me an app? You know, I would play the Q&A with you and you would say, this is what we're doing, this is how essential it is, and the app may be the business. That may be it. You've built this incredible back end, you've got great design, and I would say, yes, we are an app at the end, or something like that. But there are plenty of people who would just say, I've got 320 apps on my iPhone, I use 10 of them. Now, that's not me. I have like 400 apps, and maybe I use 50 of them. But I'm all for it if it's something that could be essential. I mean, it's like books on the shelf, right? You're not going to burn them because you don't read them. At least I'm not. But it's a business. Open Table was a desktop service for years until they finally figured out how to create a better mobile environment because they were terrified. This is a true story. They were terrified of being an app, right? But their timing was right when they finally really went mobile, had a really good app. And there are plenty of investors who will say all kinds of crap, cover your ears, just to get you out of the room. Your job is to win them, just like you would a customer, right? Or a customer might say, really, I have to download an app? It's like, if it's so essential, they'll say, yeah, of course I'll download it. Plenty of people tell you to download things all the time. They won't even finish the sentence. No, go here, download this app. Okay, now you can see. I mean, that might be the 3 seconds that you need to sell somebody, but you want to build something, and maybe if you feel yourself that you didn't want to download this, but you have to have this story. I mean, I would download Medikeep. I don't do extreme sports, but I would download his app because he might have great content that I want to see. right? You know, that's the other side of it. If you could crush your business into an app, or if the app, you know, nicely complements your business, then what's not to like? Somebody might say, that's such a great idea, that's such a great business. Do you have an app? You know, because there might be an expectation there as well. Somebody might say, well, I don't want to see all that, can you send it to me in an app form? So, I mean, you have to, you know, you have to think of that person asking you a question too, as opposed to somebody who's going to ask you the negative question first. Did that answer your question? A little bit? Okay, we can talk after. Yeah.
I have a question regarding on the same line. I talked with a friend who is working for a company who's helping truck companies to have predictive data on how long it takes today to get from Estonia to Berlin, so that they can better plan their trucks. And it's based on weather, road construction, etc. So predicting this stuff.
Great.
So what their problem is that they actually want the truck drivers to use the app. Only problem is that there's not much useful stuff right now in the app. The only thing is that they want the app to be active so that location is sent back to the headquarters and they can make better predictions. Yes, they have like tons of ideas how to make this app useful for a truck driver, what kind of content they should create, and so forth. The problem is that it's way out of their core business. It's like you are a bakery and somebody asks you to start doing metalwork. That you don't want to buy like a metal workshop on the side of a bakery and start maintaining it.
But if you make good bread and there are metal workers who like your bread, who knows? No,
so their question is that like yes, they could like make a decision and put like some heavy investment in there to creating a totally different like part of their company, creating this content for truck drivers to make this app more appealing, but it seems like too much investment for not so much value and way off their current core competencies.
Current core business is just trucking?
No, the core competencies is selling predictive data.
I mean, but you know, everyone from particularly Mercedes-Benz and many others, you know, I mean, you name the company, particularly in China, Alibaba are working on autonomous vehicles and particularly autonomous freight lines. You know, if this company wants to create something that at least gets some traction, they might be acquired by Mercedes, or they might be doing work with Mercedes. I mean, that's happening right now. So to me, they should be doing that. They should be, you know, proving that out. I mean, NVIDIA, their autonomous driving team is like, you know, 25 miles from where I am. It's, you know, one of the old Bell Labs facilities in Homedale. And I mean, they might love something like that, but the fact is that, you know, even if they're testing it here, it's like, that's a gold mine. That could be a gold mine for them. I mean, you know, I have like rain apps that people have pushed on me, right? Because, you know, some people know me as a producer, so it's like, oh, you know, sell me this rain thing, and it's like, oh, great, I'll use your rain app. I'm not going to buy your business, I don't shoot outside. So, you know, I mean, I'm a new media producer, but you know, it's like that thing of like, Yo was supposed to be $1 billion business based on something stupid that kids would do. But the fact is that if you have one key function and there's great data behind it, why wouldn't you use it? So I think, yeah.
The question is more like that they know how to sell the data and how to do predictive models, but in order to like make these models better, they should get the truck drivers to use their app. But the app is not useful right now for the truck drivers, and for them to build the core competence to create the content and buy the information which is useful for the truck drivers, it's hella expensive. So that's their problem.
Right, but I think that they need to figure out that that's going to be a problem for them with other sectors. So they have to figure that out. They're going to have to do that. Yeah,
I have those two solutions.
go for it.
First solution is maybe you don't even need the truck drivers. You go straight to the trucks and sell it to the company, somehow make it attractive to them. They get also the data somehow or something useful from out of it. And the other would be just run the app on the background for the truckers. They don't get anything but some, I don't know, money or whatever.
Yeah.
How much does it cost actually? The data, a price to put on it and just offer drivers whatever.
I think that's a great idea. Yeah, it's like using a Tobii camera to track, eye measurements. What does the trucker care? And as far as content goes, get the truckers to do something, with a dashboard camera or something like that. I don't know. I mean, that's a separate business, but running in the background is fine. I mean, it's like putting just sensors on, beacons. I mean, it's like retail. You put a beacon.
Incentivize the drivers.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Get them a cheeseburger.
Final question. I have a final question too. What's your final suggestion to the people wanting to launch a killer app?
I think the key is to, again, look at it as a business and something that you really enjoy, something that you would enjoy using. Not something that you think is done in abstract. I think that's really the key, and to start small and build from there, and learn and listen. It's a very hyper responsive business, so just be prepared to listen. And you can do a lot with a small budget just to get started. That's the other thing. Friends and family, users, and feedback as much as investors. I think that's really key. So that's pretty much what I'd say.
So thank you very much, Chris, for coming here.
I would say aita.
Thank you very much for everybody joining in. I hope you got at least one good idea from out of the workshop, and see you around.
Congrats to everybody. Great feedback.